So why does this matter so much for midlife women? Those hormonal shifts can influence a lot of things. It can influence your gut motility. It can influence microbiome composition, the different types of bacteria in your gut, the numbers. It can impact diversity, also impact stress reactivity. That's your ability to be resilient to stress or not, your cortisol levels, things like that. So probiotics may still be helpful, especially for specific GI issues or after antibiotics or during, but the foundation appears to be more so in feeding the ecosystem first. Prebiotics strengthen the terrain. Welcome to the Wellness That Fits podcast, where we help busy moms eat well, restore energy, and clear brain fog without sacrificing family time or your sanity. I'm Cassie Groeschl, registered dietitian and mom of 3. I believe wellness should fit your real life, not the other way around. If you're tired of complicated wellness trends and want simple, sustainable strategies for meal prep, holistic nutrition, and time-saving routines, you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Welcome back. Today we're talking about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention, and that is prebiotic fiber. Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about prebiotic, probiotics, and synbiotics as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about the research behind prebiotic fiber and prebiotic foods in general, and how we can change the way we're eating and add prebiotic foods to our diets. Okay, so most women that I work with in their 30s, 40s, and early 50s tell me some sort of version of this. They're bloated, their digestion feels unpredictable, their body is achy, their stress feels higher than it used to, or they have more anxiety than they used to. Their sleep isn't as solid, or they're waking up more in the middle of the night, and their mood just feels a little bit more fragile. And so with some of those digestive questions and issues, sometimes they ask or they just automatically want to go on a probiotic. Now, that's kind of what they say they've been told to do. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about, like I said, the probiotics and prebiotics, and talk about what if probiotics aren't necessarily the foundation? What if prebiotic fiber actually is? So we're going to break this down clearly and look at what the human research actually says. So first, let's distinguish between 3 things: probiotics, prebiotics, and synbiotics. Probiotics are live microorganisms, and they are specific strains of bacteria, so different kinds of bacteria that you can consume through fermented foods or also through supplements or pills. They work primarily in the gut lumen, and they can increase populations of certain strains like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. And so if you ever kind of take a look at the back of a yogurt container, you might see like 7 different strains or a few different strains, but usually one or 2 of those strains are some sort of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. And so those are just common in our gut. Now, clinical evidence shows that they can help in specific scenarios, like if somebody's taking an antibiotic and they are getting diarrhea. So really like antibiotic associated diarrhea, or even certain IBS subtypes. But the effects are strain specific and dose dependent, and they often don't permanently colonize the gut once supplementation stops. And there was a 2025 systematic review that looked at this. This was in the American Journal of Gastroenterology. And they looked basically at what happened after people came off of antibiotics and when they were on probiotics. And what they were finding is that basically if you stop supplementing with the probiotics, your strains are going to kind of like go back to normal. However, they can help in certain conditions, like I said, like antibiotic associated diarrhea. So it can help with symptoms, and also certain IBS subtypes. Meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials also show probiotics can produce small but significant improvements in depressive and anxiety symptoms. But again, results vary by strain and study design, and this is based on a 2023 meta-analysis. So basically, probiotics can help, but it's more of a targeted tool. And rather than just blindly taking a probiotic, I would talk with a healthcare provider or a clinician or dietitian and discover what is the purpose for taking the probiotic, and ensure that it is the right tool to manage your symptoms. All right, so now we're going to move into prebiotics. Prebiotics are non-digestible fibers that reach your colon intact and serve as fuel for your existing beneficial bacteria. So we're not digesting it, but our beneficial bacteria that live in our gut are fermenting it. So prebiotics don't add bacteria, they feed what's already there. They feed the bacteria that's in your gut. And when prebiotics are fermented, they produce short chain fatty acids or SCFAs like butyrate. It's one example. And butyrate supports gut barrier integrity. It can help reduce inflammation and influence gut-brain signaling. I've talked about that before on the podcast, what butyrate can do. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and it can impact mood and anxiety and other things. Now, I looked at a 2025 systematic review in the American Journal of Gastroenterology, and it found that prebiotics, particularly, there's a few different kinds, but particularly inulin, fructooligosaccharides or FOS, and galacto-oligosaccharides or GOS, and resistant starch, they show that they consistently do a few things. They increase overall microbial diversity. What does that mean? Then the different types of bacteria that are in your gut, if you feed your gut prebiotics, it's going to increase that diversity. So we're not just talking about numbers that are already there living, rather it increases the diversity, the different kinds of microbes that are in your gut. So that's one thing. And it can also increase the short chain fatty acid production. It can improve stool frequency and consistency, and it can reduce inflammatory markers. Or the specific inflammatory markers in this study were IL-6 or interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein or CRP. And so probiotics increased specific strains. So this study is still looking at, probiotics versus prebiotics. The probiotics increased specific strains, but did not significantly or consistently improve overall diversity to the same degree as prebiotics did. And that's a key difference there. So prebiotics are going to increase diversity and also increase some of those good things like the short chain fatty acids, stool frequency, and reduced inflammatory markers. That's prebiotics. Now I want to really briefly talk about synbiotics. Synbiotics combine prebiotics and probiotics together, so they're having a synergistic effect. And conceptually, that idea sounds great because it's like having the seed and the soil that it grows in put together, right? And putting that in your gut. And there's actually a lot of promising research regarding synbiotics and mental health that we can dive into another time. But I just wanted to distinguish between those three, between probiotics, prebiotics, and synbiotics. Okay, so now I want to go into a research study that I found very compelling. It is called the Gut Feelings Study. It was a randomized control trial. They did the study on 119 adults. The researchers were comparing a few different things. They were comparing a high prebiotic diet, a probiotic supplement, a synbiotic, where both a prebiotic and probiotic were combined, and a placebo, so basically nothing. And what they found was that the high prebiotic diet alone significantly reduced total mood disturbance, anxiety, stress, and improved sleep compared to the placebo. The probiotic supplement did not significantly improve these outcomes. And the symbiotic group did not outperform the prebiotic diet group alone. So what we're really looking at here is the fact that a high prebiotic diet was more beneficial in terms of impacting anxiety, stress, and improving your sleep more than supplementing with a probiotic or taking a symbiotic where both of those things were combined, which is really powerful. Okay, and so another study beyond that randomized control trial, a 2021 cross-sectional study of over 3,000 adults found that that those with the highest fiber intake had 33% lower risk of anxiety, 29% lower risk of psychological distress, and there were even stronger associations when they looked specifically at women. Now, observational studies don't prove causation, but when you layer that on top of controlled trials showing mood improvements with high prebiotic diets, the pattern becomes interesting, and biologically it makes sense. So that was more so looking at fiber, not specifically different types of fiber, but I think it's important to note that we can still see some of those decreases in mood disturbances and psychological distress, anxiety, if we increase the fiber in our diets. Okay, let's talk a little bit about types of prebiotics. So I wanted to mention first that not all fiber is prebiotic. While all prebiotic substances are a type of fiber, only specific fibers that resist digestion and are fermented by gut bacteria to promote health are classified as prebiotics. So common prebiotics include inulin, fructooligosaccharides or FOS, and galactooligosaccharides or GOS, which are found in foods like garlic, onions, and asparagus. And I'll give you a little bit more of a list, but I wanted to distinguish between those two. And so if we're like just talking about fiber in general, like dietary fiber, that's more of a broad term for carbohydrates that cannot be digested by human enzymes, including soluble fiber, insoluble fiber. And while all fiber helps with digestion and satiety, not all act as fuel for beneficial bacteria. So some of that fiber that you're eating, it's good stuff. Not all of that you're eating is going to feed your good bacteria, good gut bacteria. Some of it is just going to be used to increase bulk in your stool to help you have better bowel movements. And, some of that fiber is just going to help expand the stomach so that you feel fuller and have that satiety factor so you stop eating. But not all of it feeds your good bacteria. And so specifically, the kind that we're talking about that actually feeds your good gut bacteria is prebiotic fiber. So again, this is really feeding the gut bacteria, fostering their growth, and producing those beneficial byproducts like the short chain fatty acids. So some examples of non-prebiotic fiber would be insoluble fibers like cellulose found in some veggies and fruits. And again, those are not fermented by gut bacteria. Okay, so back on the prebiotic fiber that our gut bacteria is eating, where can we get it? Where in food sources can we get it? The whole food sources that have prebiotic fiber, and this is what I really stress because I'm always whole foods first. Whenever we can get our nutrients and things through whole foods, that's the best, right? So we can get prebiotic fiber in garlic and onions and leeks. That's kind of all the same family-ish. And then also asparagus, green bananas, oats, barley, rye, beans, and legumes. We can get it from flaxseed. We can get it from soy and cabbage as well, and also jicama. And these naturally contain fermentable fibers like those ones I talked about, inulin, the FOS, and also resistant starch. So basically, it's a starch or a carbohydrate that goes through your system and resists being digested until it's into your colon. And those are the prebiotic sort of fermentable fibers that are in some of the foods that I just listed. Whole food prebiotics provide slower, steadier fermentation and broader nutrient support. And I say broader nutrient support because it's not just about the prebiotic fiber in those foods, right? Like bananas have potassium and flaxseed has omega-3s, and there's a lot of other good things in these plant-based foods that we should pay attention to. And it's not just about the fiber, it's about the nutrients too. All right, so I did want to mention common prebiotic fibers and supplements because I do know that if this is an area that you're really trying to work on and it's really hard for you to get fruits and veggies, I always want to say whole foods first and try to get more plants. But if someone wants to use a powder, here are some of the most common forms used in clinical trials: inulin, FOS, and GOS. So inulin, this is found naturally in chicory root, one of the most studied prebiotic fibers. It's frequently used in doses of 3 grams up to 10 grams per day in trials. It's rapidly fermented in your gut, and it can cause gas if it's introduced too quickly. And that's kind of why we talk about a little bit more of a slower introduction with some of these prebiotic fibers, maybe like 3 grams to start, and then increasing it from there. And it's strongly associated with increased bifidobacteria, which is one of those good bacteria in your gut, and short chain fatty acid production. FOS, those fructooligosaccharides, is another kind. This is a shorter chain version of inulin. It ferments quickly, and it's often included in combination formulations or combination formulas. And then GOS is galacto-oligosaccharides. This is studied in some mood-related trials. Generally well tolerated at moderate doses, and it supports bifidobacteria growth. And then resistant starch is another one. This is found in cooled potatoes. So once you cook potatoes, you allow it to cool. And then let's say you microwave it the next day and allow it to cool. You're actually building the resistant starch in there. And then also green bananas and beans and legumes. This one ferments more slowly, and it's a strong promoter of butyrate production. All right, so how much is actually used in research? Most of the randomized controlled trials were using prebiotics in a range of 3 to 10 grams per day. Interventions often achieve higher total fiber intake. So just keep that in mind, like as in getting our prebiotics through food. So some of the trials that we see, they were closer to 15 to 25 grams or more daily through whole foods. But if you're introducing a supplement, that's where you want to really focus on starting like low and kind of introduce it slowly. So start low around 2 or 3 grams per day. Some of the common ones on the market say anywhere from 2 to 4 grams, maybe even 5 grams, but maybe just track how you're feeling. And if you feel like you have more gas, maybe slow it down. And if you feel like your body's handling it just fine, then you can go ahead and increase, but do so gradually, increase it gradually over 1 to 2 weeks. And always make sure to hydrate well, drink lots of water, because those fermentable fibers, they are going to dehydrate you basically if you're not drinking enough water, and then you'll get even constipated. So track symptoms, that's a good idea. Track symptoms like bloating and stool consistency and even your mood. And especially do so over 1 or 2 weeks when you maybe will start to see the benefits of adding prebiotic fibers. So women in their 30s and 50s may be especially sensitive to rapid fiber shifts due to hormonal influences on gut motility. And so another reason why slow and steady wins here, just because women more midlife age might start to see more shifts in the gut, especially in gut motility, meaning the ability for your gut to move things along faster. And so if you're a little bit more sensitive to that, then just really pay attention to it and introduce it slowly, and keep track of your mood and keep track of hydration. All right, so why does this matter so much for midlife women? I already mentioned a little bit about this, but those hormonal shifts can influence a lot of things. They can influence your gut motility. It can influence microbiome composition. So just the different types of bacteria in your gut, the numbers, it can impact diversity, also impact stress reactivity. And so that's your ability to be resilient to stress or not, your cortisol level. And then also those hormonal shifts can influence sleep patterns. And so prebiotic fibers have consistent evidence for improving stool regularity, which helps things move along in your gut. It increases microbial diversity, and it raises short chain fatty acids, and it reduces inflammatory markers, that low-grade inflammation throughout the whole body that might be building up over years and years and years of eating ultra-processed foods, increase the inflammatory markers in your body. And so prebiotic fibers can reduce those inflammatory markers that are present. And then improving mood and sleep. So probiotics may still be helpful, especially for specific GI issues or after antibiotics or during, and meta-analysis do show modest improvements in mood. But the foundation appears to be more so in feeding the ecosystem first. Probiotics add bacteria, whereas prebiotics strengthen the terrain. And so just keep that in the back of your mind in terms of the differences in what probiotics and prebiotics are doing in the body. All right, so let's get practical with this. Let's think about how we can use this knowledge in our week. And so if you want to actually fit this into your life, a couple suggestions here. So let's say in the first week, you want to add one prebiotic food daily. That might be a green banana. It might be some barley or rye or oats. Maybe you could do breakfast of overnight oats. And so you would soak the oats in almond milk or milk of your choice, add some berries to it, maybe add a little bit of coconut sugar, a little bit of sweetener to it, and you have a nice overnight oats that you could just grab and go and add additional toppings to, like flax, chia, hemp, or cocoa nibs. And so that's a really great option to do, and that's adding prebiotic fibers and also other fibers to your breakfast. You could also include a fermented food 3 times this week. That would be really a helpful thing to do. Now, that's not prebiotic fiber. That's going to be a probiotic food, but still very good for you and very practical for you to do, especially, if you're doing so with a prebiotic fiber or increasing prebiotic because of that synergistic effect. Okay, let's say in week 2, you want to focus a little bit more on plant diversity. And so maybe you want to aim for 5 to 7 different fiber sources each week. And maybe you're already getting that. That's excellent. Maybe you want to focus on even more, or adding one of those prebiotic fiber foods that I had suggested previously, like the green bananas or rye, barley, leeks, onion, garlic, soy, flaxseed. Adding any one of those, or getting maybe like 1 or 2, or increasing it over time would be a really good goal. And then maybe adding a resistant starch. So we had talked about the cooled potatoes, and so making a batch of potatoes, allowing it to cool, and then you reheat it the next day, you're still building the resistant starch. Same thing with rice actually happens. There's some resistant starch in rice also, and so when you cook it ahead of time and then you cool it, it can build that resistant starch. So a little nod to meal prep, because I like to prep a lot of my foods on Sunday, and then I have it throughout the week. And when you're prepping potatoes and rice and things like that, and legumes and beans ahead of time, and then reheating it and allowing it to cool and reheat throughout the week, you're just adding that resistant starch, which is great. And then if you're not wanting to try this food first approach, you could try an optional supplement, and I would probably start low and slow, right? So 3 grams of inulin, GOS, or a mixed prebiotic is a good place to start. Increase it slowly if you're tolerating it, and then just remember to track digestion and mood. And then hydrate consistently. That's really important. And all of this, whether you are adding prebiotics via a supplement or through food. And so please remember, consistency beats intensity. We are not trying to overhaul our lives here. We simply just want to learn about prebiotics, add 1 or 2 prebiotic foods to our week so that we can feed our good bacteria, impact our mood, improve our sleep, and all those other things we talked about today. So I just wanted to do the final takeaway and a couple of things that I had mentioned that research suggests. I talked about prebiotics consistently improving microbial diversity and short-chain fatty acid production. I talked about a high prebiotic diet and how it improves mood, anxiety, stress, and sleep in a randomized control trial. And then I also talked about probiotics can reduce depressive symptoms and meta-analyses, but effects are strain-specific and modest. And so, like I said, with the probiotics, just make sure you understand and know why you're on one instead of just being on one and hoping for the best. So for women navigating midlife, physiology, stress, and shifting hormones, prebiotic fiber may be one of the most underused mood support strategies available, and something to check out. So feed your microbiome daily, not occasionally, and it will support you back. Put it into your calendar, whether that is through meal prep or through just something that you do daily. Make it a habit so that you are fueling your body, your mood, your brain on a regular basis. And you are supporting digestion. You are improving your energy. You are improving your stress resilience and your mood, because all of those things are really important. So if you like this episode on prebiotic fiber and you want to learn a little bit more about fiber or prebiotics or probiotics or synbiotics, please DM me at Wellness That Fits on Instagram, and I would love to hear from you. And if this has been helpful to you at all, please share it with somebody. Share it with a friend, with a fellow mom or person who is in midlife. That would mean the world to me. And if you are enjoying it, you could even rate this podcast or leave a review. That would be absolutely amazing and really help me understand what other episodes to focus on and what you like to hear from. And so thank you so much for your support. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Wellness That Fits podcast. I hope you walk away with simple, doable steps you can put into practice right away. If you loved this episode, it would mean the world if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with another busy mom who could use some encouragement. Until next time, friends, keep creating wellness that fits your life.